At the height of its empire, Britain ruled a quarter of the world. From India to Africa, from Canada to Hong Kong, every inch of land was fought for, colonized, and held onto with imperial pride. But hidden on the northeastern coast of China was a quiet exception: Weihaiwei, a strategic port leased by the British in 1898, just across from the Russian-held Port Arthur. Weihaiwei was meant to be a foothold, a gateway to power in East Asia. But just 3 decades later, Britain would give it up, without a fight. Why did the world's most powerful empire abandon a colony on the rise? What happened behind closed doors between British diplomats and Chinese officials? And why has this chapter of imperial history been forgotten? The geopolitical context. To understand why Britain took Weihaiwei and why its leader gave it up, we need to rewind to the final years of the 19th century. The Qing dynasty was on its knees, and foreign powers were circling like vultures. After Japan's crushing victory over China in 1895, Russia seized Port Arthur. Germany took Jiaozhou Bay. France grabbed Guangzhou Bay. And Britain? It demanded balance. In 1898, Britain signed a lease with the Qing government. It would control Weihaiwei as long as Russia held Port Arthur. The goal was not just empire, it was chess, a move on the imperial board against Russia's expansion. Why Weihaiwei mattered. Weihaiwei wasn't just another port. It had deep, defensible waters, ideal for the British Navy. Its position near Korea and Manchuria made it a key strategic outpost during a time of rising tensions in the Pacific. But unlike Hong Kong, Weihaiwei wasn't transformed into a financial hub or trade center. It remained mostly administrative and military, a staging ground, never a crown jewel. Still, the British invested in railways, law courts, and hospitals. A small, tidy colonial town emerged, strange and out of place, in rural Shandong province. The Anglo-Japanese shift. Then, in 1902, everything changed. Britain signed a revolutionary treaty, the Anglo-Japanese Alliance. For the first time, Britain officially recognized Japan's role in East Asia, and vice versa. Suddenly, Russia was no longer the main threat. Japan took Port Arthur in 1905, and Britain, it no longer needed Weihaiwei. By the 1910s, Weihaiwei was no longer a strategic necessity. It became symbolic, a dusty remnant of British overreach. Daily life under British rule. Despite its shrinking strategic value, Weihaiwei remained under British control for over 30 years. But unlike the bustling colony of Hong Kong or the fortified presence in Singapore, this quiet territory developed in a very different way. It was governed by a British commissioner who answered not to London, but to the governor of Hong Kong. It was one of the few colonies that never had a formal legislature, only a small circle of administrators. British rule focused on health, order, and control, not commerce. Public sanitation was prioritized. Hospitals were built. Traditional Chinese practices were respected, but heavily supervised. Most of the population remained rural. There was little industrial development. In many ways, Weihaiwei was less a colony and more a laboratory for soft governance. A colony without a purpose. By the 1920s, Britain faced a problem. It was holding on to a territory that no longer made sense strategically, economically, or politically. The Anglo-Japanese Alliance had expired. Chinese nationalism was on the rise, and global empires were beginning to strain under the weight of the New World Order. In London, policymakers began to question, why hold Weihaiwei at all? There were no riches, no real trade, no warships remained. The people, mostly poor farmers and fishermen, A quiet consensus formed in the Foreign Office. It was time to let it go. The handover of 1930. In 1930, with little fanfare, Britain returned Weihaiwei to the Republic of China. It was not a sudden break, but a calm and negotiated transition. Britain retained control of the naval base for another decade, but civilian control returned to Chinese hands. There were no protests, no violence, no warships fired in anger. In the grand drama of imperial retreats, Weihaiwei was quiet, almost peaceful. A historical footnote most have forgotten. Legacy and reflection. Today, little remains of British rule in Weihaiwei. The old buildings on Lu Kongdao stand as faded relics. Tourists pass by, unaware that this place was once an outpost of empire. But the story of Weihaiwei matters. It reminds us that not all colonies ended in revolution, that not all empires fell with a bang. Some, like Weihaiwei, slipped away with a whisper. In a century defined by conquest and collapse, Weihaiwei stands apart. A colony without conquest, returned without war, a forgotten chapter in the story of British imperialism, and a reminder that sometimes letting go is the most strategic move of all.